Hello. I hope you can hear us. Welcome back to this week's Weekly Woof. As you can probably tell, it's a little bit different from normal. I'm a bit more zoomed in. You can just see me. Unfortunately, Zael can't be here today. Unfortunately, he's got a lot of work on. He's doing his PhD and he's unavailable today. But that doesn't matter. I've got an amazing guest with me who you can see on my, I think it's on my left, there, it's on my right here. This is Daddy. What we're going to talk about here today is consent and safety. So, and if you haven't been here today and you're going no clue, going, what the hell is this? What have I tuned into? This is pretty much a talk show where normally it's me, Thumper, my pronouns are they, them, and my co-host Zael, but he's unfortunately here. We go through topics around the kink and fetish and LGBTQ+ community, and like I said, today's is about consent and safety. So obviously I've introduced, we've got Dad. I'm doing the hands all the wrong way. It's always flipped. Today we've got Daddy today. Daddy, do you want to explain who you are, your pronouns, and just a little bit of background for everyone?
Hi there, everybody. I'm Daddy Dagda. My pronouns are he, him. Crikey. I've been part of the kink community in one form or another for probably the last 15 years or so, which might not be as long as some, might be longer than others. And I've had a wide and interesting range of experiences within it. And I wouldn't change many of them for the world because they have helped to shape how I interact with the kink and fetish community and how I interact with the LGBTQ+, or as I've started referring to it, thanks to TikTok, the alphabet mafia.
Yeah, it's a lot of words. I always say queer because that's easy. I hate saying LGBTQ+ because it's like a mouthful. It's like I'm sneezing or something. But obviously, Daddy, we're going to go through a bit of your experiences. But if you've in comment section, I see 6 of you watching. If any of you are there and want to ask Daddy some questions, message them down. First bit of this talk today will be about Daddy and talk about his experience, his 15 years of experience, nearly as long as I've been alive. just to stab that knife in. So, Daddy, you were talking about you've had a lot of experiences, some good. Oh, my camera's decided to move. I'm going to move back this way and see if it follows me. It's follow me. This is what I mean. I lose Zael and the camera doesn't like me anymore. I'm going to shuffle over. I'm going to shuffle over a little bit. So, Dad, you said you've had a few experiences in your life, some for the positive, some for maybe not as positive. So can you explain to me maybe one of the positive experiences you've had in your 15 years?
So there are two that really stand out to me, and one of them is really my first experience into the kink community was actually with a female friend of mine, who I started having sort of a conversation about. Oh, I've kind of started having these thoughts about sort of stuff that's a little less than vanilla, and she's like, and she responded with that, oh, are they kinky? She wanted the gossip because she's my best friend. So we had that conversation, and she invited me to a munch. Even though I identify as a gay man, and this was for a sort of mostly aimed at heterosexual kink couples. She said, "Come with me because it doesn't really matter. None of that's really important because this is a social event." So she took me to my very first sort of social kink event where I got to ask lots of questions and people were very happy to answer them. And it made a big difference in me wanting to sort of further explore things, just being in that kind of social space, discussing kinks, discussing fetishes, discussing how we go about sort of partaking in these things and all the sort of the various sort of accoutrements that there are with them, and the various sort of things that go off to make them possible. Um, and it felt a bit strange to start off with because it was, you know, this is my best friend, and we don't have that kind of relationship, but we are both kinky people, and she knows people and was able to introduce me to people who I could chat to and who I could find more information out about various sort of kinks and fetishes. So that was really, really good and a very good kind of first experience, because it was just a social experience. I wasn't getting tied up. I wasn't experiencing any of the kinks and fetishes that I wanted to try, but I was learning more about them. So it was really helpful to me to do that. And the other one that really strikes me as kind of a really great experience was the first time I ever went to Club F.O.D in London. I'd just moved to London. I was living with a couple of friends who were not kinky. And so I went to Club F.O.D on my own for the very first time, and I felt I was made very welcome, because there was no dress code, because it was you can turn up, you pay your entry fee, and you can just see what's going off, and experience the things that you want to try. And if you want to try things, there were people there that might want to try things with you. The staff when I started going, the volunteer staff were amazing people, and really, really made me feel very comfortable, to be able to try things both in a submissive and as a dominant, because you know some I've got a bit of a switchy tendencies at times. So that was really, really good, and it's left me with some really kind of some lifelong friends I've made out of both of those experiences that I can just have conversations with about kink, fetish, board games, the price of fish, you name it. You know, they're just friends now. They're just kinky friends, and it's great.
So I think we've covered the conversation of munches before, where we're talking about events and spaces. I think it'd be nice to iterate this again. Where would you go and find them? Where would you go and find these social events?
See, I've not been to a purely social munch in a very long time now. So my sort of first port of call would probably be looking at something like FetLife. And while it has a lot of sort of pitfalls and plot holes to sort of work your way through, there are often social events being advertised, and then Twitter can often have quite a few things if you're following the right groups. And sometimes just Google will take you through to the right kind of look for, you know, the right kind of things. You've just got to kind of work out a little bit. But half the time, it's just approach people, send somebody a message, sending a group like this one a message, because they will have access to more information than you might have. And most of the time, they are staffed by amazing people who are more than happy to help educate you into the right place where you need to be to get to these sort of social events. Because the social side of things, where you can meet like-minded people in a non-sexual way, in a non-active fetish, active kink way, is really important, because it is the education side of things which is as important as the actual doing.
Yeah, like we've just started putting out events at the start of the week, so events that we know are coming up. So if anyone's interested, there's a Kinksters Social, which is at Kinksters Social on Twitter, who are doing a social straight after this. So at 9 o'clock, they're doing a social on Zoom, and that's a great one. I've joined once or twice when I felt comfortable to do so, and they're a really good one. And we try and retweet and comment about different events. And if you want to message us, we probably know a few events, because a lot of us go to events as well. We'll know events in your area. So if you ever want to contact us, which is at Animagi CIC, little plug there, we will display events, we'll show off events, but we'll also be there as sort of a contact if you're worrying or trying to find events. We can try and help you find some. Someone did say in the comments, what do I call Daddy 1 and Daddy 2 then? So that's my little pup, because getting confused about who's Daddy 1 and who's Daddy 2.
Well, I'm Daddy Dagda, so just Dagda will do to help get rid of the confusion.
It's Daddy 1, and I love that. Daddy 1 and Daddy 2, like thing 1 and thing 2. We're going to jump out of the box in a minute. So another thing is that we talked about positive experiences, and we talked about events being very positive, but also I guess negative things do happen. We've talked about this on the show before. What's something that you've gone through that's been a bit more negative, or not gone as well, let's say?
To be fair, I would say it was while I was at one of the Colin events. I was feeling my dom side, and I'd got a submissive that was wanting to play, wanting to do some mummification style bondage, which is one of the things I really enjoy. And while I'd got this person sort of tightly bound up in layers of pallet wrap and duct tape with just particular parts of them exposed, I was performing a particular act on them, and somebody sort of came sneering across and said, "That's not very dom of you." And I sort of stopped for a moment and had to take a step back and kind of go, why are you judging what I'm doing as an activity and deciding what is and isn't dom, when it clearly is something I'm enjoying doing, and the person that I'm doing it to is also enjoying having this activity. So fortunately, I'm 6'4" and able to fairly well stand up and then stand up some more. So I stood up and turned to this person and just said to them, what we're doing is what we're doing. And you need to take your attitude away from us, because neither of us want it here. And if you don't want to take your attitude away from us, I'll have to speak to the event organisers, because this is not what this space is for. And they then left me alone, and left the submissive I was playing with alone. But I'm lucky that I have the confidence to stand up for myself. I didn't used to a long time ago, but having sort of had my corners knocked off a little bit by life, I've had to sort of grow those sort of that ability to stand up. And so I was able to sort of deal with that situation and then get back to enjoying my evening. So yeah, so occasionally it happens.
Yeah, so Sudo, I don't know if you know Sudo. I never know how to say it. I don't say names properly. I apologize. You can probably see the comments as well. In terms of that, he says, it drives me mad when people try to classify what's dom or what's sub. It's sometimes nice to mix things up and have fun with it. And I obviously, as a 6'2", 6'4", 6'2", 4. Oh God, even taller. Pseudo. As a 6'4" person, and you're saying you've got a lot of life experience behind you. I'm not saying it isn't any less easy for you to stand up, but I guess it can be a bit easier for you to stand up and have that conversation. But if someone was starting out and didn't feel, let's say, as comfortable in that space because they haven't had as much experience, or they're not of the physique where they feel they can dominate a space and have that conversation, what would you advise them to do in that situation?
If it's at an event, immediately speak to an event organizer. Make sure that first of all, make sure that the person that you're playing with is safe and they're okay. Ignore someone who's just block them out for a moment. You don't need that negativity. Check in with your submissive, check in with the person that you're playing with, and then make sure you tell somebody who is organising that event, because it is their responsibility as an event organizer to make sure that everybody there is respectful of each other and respectful of what's going off. And if someone is not respecting you and is not respecting what you're doing, the event organizers can go and have that word for you. That's what that's part of what their responsibility should be.
Yeah, I think college generally, I know I go to college London. I think you'll talk about probably college Manchester, but I know the people.
Oh no, it was London.
Was it London? Okay.
I used to live in London. It was London.
Oh, it was London many moons ago.
When I was young and you was even younger.
Yeah. But I know the people who now run College London, and if that does happen, I know they very much do take a very strict ruling on it. And I've had discussions with the organisers before, because there's been conversations where that's happened to me, or conversations where someone's questioned what I was doing, or started getting invaded into my space. Because there is a bubble when you're playing with someone, especially if you've got floggers like I do. There is a space bubble you need. Don't come into that space bubble, because I will probably hit you by accident.
I have had that happen. I have had somebody on a St Andrew's cross flogging them, and someone decided to walk between me and the person on the cross.
Not a good idea.
It's really not a good idea. And you may get injured because I'm trying to flog somebody and I know the distances and I know the impact force I'm going with, and all of a sudden there's another body moving through, and I've got to suddenly jar my arm or my shoulder to stop me from hitting you. And thanks, but that's me not able to flog anybody anymore tonight because I've jarred myself to protect you.
And it's mentally as well. It's not just physically. I think when we talk about, I think we'll talk about this later as well, about safety. We're not always just talking about physical effects. We're talking about mental effects as well, because I very much knew when I've had it before, where I've hit an object or someone's invaded a space, that I very much, it's jumped me out of a mindset. And also I worry then that I'm not doing something safely, because to be honest, I was fine. It was the other person that was invading the space that was in the wrong, but it jumped me and it made me self-doubt. My glasses fall off. Made me self-doubt, and the problem there is then I'm not in the right mindset. I feel really bad about myself. I start overthinking, and I get in a real bad rut. So it's important to, I think it's done like dungeon rules, or I forget there's a proper word for it, but it's like dungeon rules. Is that when you're be aware of what situation you're in. I've had someone where I've been spanking someone in the basement. Someone obviously heard that I was doing that, stormed down the stairs and goes, "What naughty stuff's going on down here then?" Just as I'm about to go for one of my hardest hits of the evening. And literally, I'm not joking you jump, and I was like nearly hit them right on the lower back, because obviously I jumped because someone shouted right behind me, and I nearly missed and damaged them properly. And it's just it's those dungeon rules. It's that if there's something that's wrong or going on wrong, you safely go up to someone at a point which is, unless it's dangerously safe, but if it's at a point, you find a safety point where you can go in and talk to them and have a discussion. You quietly go up to people and you have a quiet discussion. You don't shout. You don't run around like a lunatic. If you don't play with someone who isn't your submissive, unless they are on college and you ask for their consent, if they are someone else's, you ask them and their dominant if you're allowed to play with them. It's not just their consent you need, it's their dominant's consent as well, because they are in a relationship of sorts. It's these, I think, these simple rules that sometimes have been, I think they've been lost more recently. I think they used to be very, very strict, which is sometimes it's nice to have some strict rules, and I think it's nice that we've become a bit more fluid and less more relaxed. But there is a reason for some of these rules. It is safety.
And safety,
And
is
consent.
the reason why you have to have a structure. However, that's just sort of like points that you build from. It's not the entirety of the thing, The corner posts of your safety, great, but everything else should be fluid and adaptable and suitable to what you're and the people you are playing with, what their needs are.
I think we'll go on in a bit, but I think we've talked about this, and we said if you're given a protocol and you follow the protocol to the T, if something goes wrong out of that protocol and you're not expecting it, or you've got a problem, or they said, oh, if this problem happens, you follow this protocol. If it doesn't absolutely follow that protocol, and all you've been taught is to follow this protocol, and something goes out of this protocol, you are absolutely stumped. You have no clue what to do because you haven't been taught creativity, you haven't been taught ingenuity. That was a long word to say. And the thing is that you end up putting both of you more at risk because you're not actually thinking about the bigger picture. All you're thinking about is this protocol that's been given to you. You need to think about the bigger picture. You need to be creative. You need to think for yourself. Every situation is different. You can't. No situation is ever the same.
No situation is ever the same. But protocols kind of also exist for a reason.
Yeah.
And they are a great. 9 times out of 10, a protocol is a great basis to start from, but they shouldn't be the end point.
Yeah, agreed. Yeah. It's something to build off of. It's not.
Yeah.
Don't just learn the protocol because that's not going to help you. You need to read that protocol, learn the protocol, and build on it, and learn. Be creative. Think about solutions. Think about problems. So normally we'd have a game here that would be run by Zael, but unfortunately, he's left us for the evening. So I think we're going to go through some. I thought it'd be nice to go through some acronyms because there's a lot of acronyms that go around. If there's any questions, we can try and answer some of the questions now or afterwards. I think there's one question that's just popped up, but someone's cursor's in the way, so I really need that cursor to disappear. Whoever's controlling my live stream at the moment. Why is the X part of the protocol in addition to? Can you read that? I'm having struggles.
Think about the why is X part of the protocol in addition to this, then do that. So it's like, why do we do this thing? So rope play, why do I have a pair of shears? Because of these other things. Yeah. Why might I need them? What happens if this happens? What are my options? How do I make this safe again? How do I protect the person I'm playing with and myself?
Yeah.
It's that protocol is that start, but it's then all these different things we can go from.
Yeah, as a scientist, I'm a scientist, if no one knows.
So am I.
So we're both scientists. Hello. We don't look it, but we are.
Sorry. Shall I look over my glasses a little more? Would that
help? I can't do that with my glasses.
I've got a lab coat somewhere. I can find one.
I've got one for play actually.
Yeah, so have I.
I stole it from work for play.
Oh, I had mine specially made.
Ooh. Anyway, Well, as a scientist, you're always given protocols every day, but the only way that you work out where something's gone wrong or how to fix something if something goes wrong in your protocol is knowing why you do each step of that protocol.
Yeah.
Why do you do this? Why do I do that? Why do that? Then I can problem solve of why this didn't work at the end. And that's why I like the safety stuff, because it's so much like work. It's so much like my work that I'm like, oh, I do this every day. I'm so used to doing it. I don't know why more people aren't doing it, because that's what I do every day. This is so therefore I know what I'm doing when I go into this, because it's an everyday thing. It's why my mind thinks, because I'm so used to doing it. It's a mindset that I've created.
And for you, that's brilliant. But there are the other side of the people that use the other side of their brain a little bit more, where it's not that protocol that I do this because of this, and therefore if this happens, I can do the other. It's much harder to do. Fortunately, a lot of the sort of like, because you're a very left brain kind of logic and all that sort of thing.
My brain's all over the place.
The right brain sided people, the creative type people, fortunately, they are the creative types. So they can, rather than follow these are the rules for these reasons, but also, haha, this is my solution, this is my creative solution. But learning those rules can sometimes be harder. Learning those protocols can be harder. So I appreciate that there are reasons why people do things differently, and that's sometimes to do with just how they think about the problem and how they problem solve.
I think that's good, because that's why this is why these munches exist, because you've got people with different minds coming up with different problems to a solution, and then all of us are joined together going, oh, I had this happen. I bet you've had it at a munch where you've had a discussion of, oh, this happened once a time, and this is what I did. And then someone goes, oh, I had a similar occasion, I did this. And then you all talk about it and then realize what's the best steps going forward in the future if that situation comes up. And that's why these socials are so important, because you learn from each other.
Yeah, it's that sharing of experiences, sharing of knowledge, and then sharing of, oh, you did that. Well, that sounds like that solved that problem better than how I did it. I'm gonna try that next time. That'll be in my brain, because I've not, and I've also heard the story, and because sometimes that I've heard the story about why this happened and why you solved it like that is better. It's why storytelling exists and continues through so many different cultures as well. And kink culture, the fetish culture and communities that we're part of have our own stories and our own storytelling traditions, and munches are part of that. And that's problem solved, that's solutions, that this is a thing that happened to me. Oh, something else similar happened to you. Oh, you did that. That's brilliant. I'll try that if it ever happens to me again.
Yeah, there's a real need for those conversations, real need for that space that unfortunately we're not sure is going to be there after COVID.
But we keep hoping and we keep fighting to make sure we have it.
Make sure we have space. Queer spaces are essential. They are important spaces. So I'm going through some acronyms. I was going to start off with probably one of the oldest acronyms for safety and consent, SSC. So SSC stands for
safe, sane, and consensual.
So obviously we're talking about safety. We all know what safety is. I would say safety is the likelihood of something happen and the consequence. So you could have a low likelihood, so it's probably not going to happen, to it really is likely to happen, and also then that marries up to the effect that it's going to cause, the consequence. Am I just going to get a little bit of rope burn or a little bit of a mark after play from rope digging into me, or am I going to lose sensation in my hand due to nerve damage or trapped nerve? It's different consequences, different risks, because you work out the consequence versus the likelihood. I think you're.
Sorry,
my glasses fell off just as you started.
Okay.
I was like,
what I was going to say in is part of that is, you can reduce those risks with, as part of your safety, and using rope work as your example, that's why you have your safety shears. That reduces that risk, that reduces the chance of consequence. So as part of your safety, you do the, okay, so I'm doing this activity. What do I need to make? What do I need to have? What do I need to prepare in advance to make sure that I can reduce those risks? I can make sure that there are limitations to those consequences. So you bring in that balance back.
Yeah, and it's the other thing of experience. How much experience has how much has the dom got experience, but also how much experience has the sub got? Because a lot of the time, I'm going to use role play. I was going to talk about this in a bit more detail later, but I think it's probably the best example because it makes the most sense when it comes to safety because it's the most apparent and most visible. In terms of if I've never been in rope before, I don't know the sensation of a trapped nerve, or I don't know the sensation of what rope should feel like. Therefore, the the likelihood of me not being aware of what's going on and then cause the likelihood of something else to happen is quite high. So you've probably got to check in more and make sure that they're feeling okay and talk to them about what it should feel like. But with someone who's a bit more experienced, you probably don't need to do as much of that checking, and that likelihood of someone not being aware of what's going on is lowered. So the likelihood of something major happening has lowered. It's experience also comes into play, not just have I got a pair of safety gears, it's how much experience each person got.
Absolutely, absolutely. And also that conversation beforehand to work out what that level of experience is. Because, you say about, if that person's very experienced, you might not check in on them quite so much. Well, maybe you will just check in on them just the same amount, but you know that someone like an experienced submissive will bring something to the dominant's attention much quicker than someone who isn't as experienced because they don't necessarily know that this tingling sensation that's starting to happen actually is the first sign of something worse. Well, for example, if you know that tingling is okay, I've got maybe 5 minutes left before this is going to be stop being a tingle and start becoming a numb, and I'd know that having spent quite a few times in someone else's webs. But someone who's not been experienced in being tied up, being roped up, might not have that same level of knowledge. So they go, "Oh no, it's tingling's fine. It's just a tingle. It's just a bit of pins and needles." Yeah. You check more. Might check more frequently, but like we said, that experienced submissive will bring that to someone's attention more readily and let them know I've got 5 minutes left because I'm starting to get a bit
tingly. And it's also, I think, that conversation is important to work out things that people have. Like I have a really bad shoulder injury from rugby. I've torn the ligament between my shoulder and my collarbone, which means that my rotation in my shoulder is absolutely appalling. So certain positions of my arm will trap my nerve or trap circulation more than a normal person, and I can't rotate in certain movements, so it's more painful. And it's conversations like that I'd have with my dominant if I was being submissive in this case, going, I have this shoulder injury, or also I have acute claustrophobia. I feel a bit claustrophobic in sometimes, not all the times, but I do sometimes feel claustrophobic. Be aware of this, and it's those psychological and physical things that you have, which is so beneficial to a dom. But also, dom's telling the submissive. Sometimes the communication only happens one way, with submissives telling the dom everything, and it's sometimes like, well, actually, I want to know what hands am I in, or what experience you have, or what problems you have. Because if I end up doing something accidentally, or I do something like tease or something, and I say something that I shouldn't say because you have past experience of a word or phrase or an action, and it causes you to not feel very great, I want to know that so I don't do it. Conversations got to happen both ways.
But these are the conversations that I sometimes feel that the rise of the social media monster has reduced some of these live face-to-face conversations that are so really important. And yes, great, during the lockdown, during COVID, this pandemic, we are much more aware of the conversations we're having with each other. We're having those conversations again via social media. But I know that the first time I ever went to be submissive to anybody, I met them for a cup of coffee in a public location. And I told my friend where I was going and told them that they need to call me and I needed to tell them a particular word um, to make sure that I was safe. And
I was about to say, or if you're at a bar, there's always a word that you can say behind the bar, which is, I believe, is angel, right?
it's ask for a lot of
Ask for
bars
angel,
or Angelo.
Angelo. If you
Yeah,
ask, if you say ask for angel, most places, most experienced bar members will know, or they'll go and, or someone who's inexperienced will go tell the manager, and the manager will also automatically click on and go, oh, is someone asked for angel? Oh, I know what that means.
I I have direct experience with this, having worked in a bar for 10 years. I have been asked for Angel in the past.
Yeah. And that's important. It's an important safety thing.
Mm.
I don't think it's talked about as much because the best thing is that if you're meeting someone that you don't know or no one knows or you have no previous experience of, meet them in a public space. If you're meeting them in a bar location, make sure people know where you're going, know the code words for the discussion over the bar, such as ask for angel to make sure that you're safe, and always keep an eye on your drink. It's simple bar etiquette that keeps you safe, and it's good to make sure that people do that and people have the conversations and that everyone knows what to do. Because I think I've had it once where I've left a drink on the side and I ended up not feeling very well a bit later. It's not a very fun night, and I didn't really have a great time. And I've never done it again. And I've never left a drink around and unchaperoned, as they say. And I've always learned words that I could say behind the bar if I was feeling really bad. Because the thing is that I left the bar and that was it. Um, in a different place, in a different town altogether, and was left quite alone. And I've realised from then onwards, I need to know what I need to do if I get in that situation again. Yeah, public settings are always good, and you need the discussions beforehand. But after that, Chewed.
The other thing I was going to say to that is the other thing that I've asked for in the past is references.
Yeah.
Please, can you give me references for people you've played with, so I can ask them direct questions? Would you recommend playing with this person? Can you tell me a little bit more about your experiences? And some people will freely go if you want, if you want references, here's a list of people that I'm happy to give you that you can contact. These are people I've played with in the past. Because sometimes you want a reference, you want to know what the experience is going to be like, especially if you're giving yourself over as a submissive. You can, especially if you're and if you're newer to it and you're less experienced, ask for references, ask to speak to people that have played with that dominant before. And the same goes the other way. If you're the dominant, ask them, can you tell me some of the doms you might have played with in the past, so I can find out, sort of, if nothing else, look at what their social media is and see what kind of play that they're into and what I'm sort of going to be looking to experience with you.
Yeah, I did that for my current dom that's collared me recently. When I first started chatting to them, then I realised it was going to become physical. I said, "Oh, who you played with before that I know?" And they went, "Oh, do you know this person, this person, this person?" Right? Yeah, yeah, yeah. And I said, "Look, I'm probably going to contact them because I just want to know how they felt when they were playing with you because I trust them and I want to make sure that I'm safe." And I went, okay, yeah, it's fine. I chatted to my friends and said, look, I'm talking to this person. Most of the conversations weren't of those of a safety measure, more rather the length of a certain piece of equipment, which I was like, well, that's not beneficial to me. But I know that you've had a good time and that you felt comfortable and that you were engaged with that person, and that made me feel comfortable. And it made me feel more comfortable when meeting that person this first time because I knew that other people had enjoyed playing with that person. Therefore, I knew that I was in safe and comfortable hands. And
But I think we then easily move on to the second S there, don't we?
is it sane?
Yeah. But that's a really vague term, sane. What do we
Yeah.
mean by sane? You know, do we mean you know, not diagnosed with anything, or do we mean everybody's in a particular headspace? You know, while I enjoy an alcoholic beverage from time to time, I'm not going to get drunk or drink while I'm playing with somebody, because that reduces my ability, that reduces my mental ability, because that's what it does, you know. So would that be sane? Am I sane if I'm sober?
Yeah, because I think this is one of the conversations why it's one of the older acronyms and it's been updated
Mm,
recently. Is because what it's saying is for some people it might actually feel quite bad. It might feel quite exclusive to people who's neurodiverse because you're saying that anyone who's neurodiverse isn't sane.
yeah,
Therefore, are you saying that they can't engage in play, which is totally not true,
absolute
totally
bollocks.
wrong. Some people say, "Oh, is this type of play sane?" To me, getting getting a whole bucket of guns tipped over me and being, let's say, having some sort of liquid over me, another type of liquid over me, is sane. For someone
Yeah,
else, that's like, what the hell are you doing? And it's totally different for totally different people, and that's why we did. I think the acronym was updated. We'll talk about the
yeah.
next acronym. Um, because what he's saying, what does it mean? It has no sense. I think I know where they're going from it, saying, "Oh, is this activity reasonable? Is this activity not going to cause someone serious harm?" But it just got so misconstrued, and
Mm.
it doesn't explain actually what that saying meant. But then the next one was, do you want to go for that one?
Consensual.
Consensual, which is part of the reason why we've got you on today. Um, because it's a big thing within everyone. I do actually want to ask you a question though, which I actually thought I forgot to ask you in the little pre-chat. Um, a lot of people say consent is sexy. Um, I don't know what your feelings on that phrasing is, because there are different feelings on that.
Um, it's a tricky one, because quite frankly, consent is sexy. Someone has said, yes, I would like to do these things with you. And it's flattering. It's a wonderful feeling. Someone has said yes. And and if I've also said yes, that's amazing. You know, I have a couple of people that I'm currently chatting to and trying to plan future things for when we're allowed to, you know, plan the future and things. And one of them I kind of messaged on the off chance, because I thought, you are a beautiful person. You have a wonderful selection of kinks and fetishes that you enjoy. I shall send you a message just to say hello. And the conversation has gone to the point of them saying, I would like to do things with you. And that makes me feel really, really good. Um, Getting consent from somebody is amazing. I wouldn't even say, see, for me, sexy is not the word. It's not sexy, it's amazing. It fills you, it should fill you with a great sense of well-being and accomplishment that someone has consented to saying yes to you. Um, Consent isn't sexy, consent is everything. Um, and it's very, very important. It
Yeah,
is the
because
most important. And anyone who says, and even just from when you're making out with somebody that you like and you want to move things further along, anyone that says that, oh, asking consent kills the mood. No, it doesn't. I don't know how you can do that. I don't know how you can say that, because you whisper something in that your partner's ear and you ask them, what can I do to you? What would you like me to do with you? Is sexy, is hot, it's still erotic, it's great.
I always say, because I always say the reason I say consent is sexy is that communication. It's having that discussion, and there's nothing better than having a great discussion with someone and finding out you've got similar interests, you're both interested in each other, and you're both happy. But then there is a reason why I don't like the phrase is that yes, consent is sexy for all the reasons we said, but the thing is that consent, I think you touched on consent. Consent is everything. Consent is mandatory. And I think the idea sometimes when someone says consent is sexy is that it sometimes doesn't give the gravity to the importance of consent.
Yeah.
It's that line where you've got to go and say, yes, consent is very sexy because it means that you can go to a next stage. It means that you can develop a relationship, you can develop a conversation, but also it's needed. And if you don't have consent, don't force it. That is not consent. And we'll talk about this, I think, when we talk about the acronym for consent. And it's the thing is that you need to have consent. If you don't have consent, then you can't
Nothing's
do anything.
happening.
Don't do anything.
Yeah. If you don't have consent, it's the cup of tea. I think is the best. One of the best I've seen is it's a cup of tea. Do you want a cup of tea? Is the question that you ask. You know, shall I make you a cup of tea? You don't want a cup of tea if you're unconscious. You don't want a cup of tea if you're asleep. You don't want a cup of tea if you can't say yes to a cup of tea. It's a great little way of describing consent, like a cup of tea. And I know as an English person, I kind of always want a cup of tea, but I still want asking if I want a cup of tea.
Oh yeah, I don't want it forced down my throat, especially when it's piping hot. I don't want a piping hot tea. We always like sipping the tea though. There's always more tea to sip. There's always some tea. So I think we've talked about SSC and the problems with it and the benefits of it and why we have it. But some of the more recent acronyms are RAC, so we say risk aware consensual kink, and also PRIC, so personal responsible informed consensual kink. Did you want to? We can quickly gloss over those and.
Sure. Sorry, I was just looking at one of the comments. Someone asking for consent to go further in the middle of anything, like you just described, is honestly one of the. Yeah, I 100% agree. Sorry, it was a really good comment. So yeah, the next acronym. Sorry.
That's right. It's just that just for people who are not on YouTube, because we're on different mediums. It's all fancy. We're on 6 different mediums. We're streamed all over the web. Only 6 people watch, so it could be one person on each stream, but that's fine. So someone was saying, someone asking for consent in the middle of something or middle of a scene, as described by Daddy, is one of the hottest things for someone. And it is, even if you're disrupting what you're doing and saying, actually, I just want to go this little bit further. Would you like to? And sometimes sometimes you're not ready for it and you say, no, I'd like a bit more of a break. But sometimes when you know you're ready, but you're too scared to say something, but then there's other partner or partners there saying, would you like to? And you know you want, and you've been wanting to discuss it, but you've been a little bit scared of saying it, and then they whisper that in your ear is like, yes, 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 please. But yeah, next acronyms, RAC and PRIC. So risk aware consensual kink and personal responsible informed consensual kink. God, it's a mouthful. So we've talked about what the consensual bit is, and I want to talk about an acronym that we use here at Animagi quite a lot. And we sort of know what kink is. Kink is the activity. But here they talk about risk aware. What would you say risk aware is?
Well, it's knowing what the hazards are. To be able to know what the consequences of your actions can be. Knowing what the dangers of any of the activities that you might be doing are.
Yeah, I would say it's like that, a little risk assessment. It's your little risk assessment for what activity you're doing. My glasses keep falling off. I need to sort this out. It's the risk assessment part of your play. You always have to do it because no matter if it's sexual intercourse or the suspension, they all carry risk. And we'll hopefully get a little bit of time at the end of these acronyms to talk about this and talk about why there is risk involved in everything. But then also, so that's RAC, so risk aware consensual kink. We talked about what risk awareness is. But PRIC, they say personal responsible or personal responsibility. Obviously, that sounds sometimes I don't like that phrasing, because for me that feels like it's my responsibility for every action. And I think sometimes that can, especially when sometimes someone steps the bounds and doesn't get so consensually, I think that sometimes isn't what should be said. It's not your responsibility for someone to stop when you say no. Uh, and that's the reason why I don't like prick, because of that phrasing. But I know that's not what the meaning is, but that's what goes through my head as a
I get that.
person.
However, I would say it is your responsibility to know what your limits are.
Yes, that's what the acronym's for. It's to learn what your limits are, but also for you both to understand, not just the dominant to
Yeah.
understand what the risks are and how to mitigate the risks and to have shears, but it's also for the sub to understand there's shears in place for the dom to cut you out if there is a problem. And it's good for you as a submissive to know that the dom's thought about your safety and your care. But then there is that flip side where I don't like the acronym for that reason. It's my personal belief. I know it's not something that everyone sees and not everyone believes in that, and that's definitely not what the acronym stands for. But it's like the saying bit. It's not specific enough for me. I feel it's not that comfortable.
Yeah, but I think this is one of the reasons why I prefer sort of using the traffic light system when doing any kink activities, because I am looking for active consent and then ongoing consent and then the withdrawal of consent if that is what happens. Because I feel that, that system works best for me. It might not work best for you, it might not work best for other people, but for me personally, I like the traffic light system because I've had that conversation to start off with, and we've discussed the potential activities that we're going to do during a session, and I've made sure everything's safe, and I've done my sort of my risk assessment beforehand, and I've made sure that I have everything that I need to make sure that my submissive is going to enjoy the activities that we're doing, or in the case of spanking, endure the activities that we're going to be doing, but also making sure that we know when to stop, and having that, because we assume once we've got that first consent, we assume we're then green and we have active consent to say yes to these activities, and then ongoing consent while we're doing these activities. And it's then the use of amber and red. And amber, so we can ease off, we can slow down, we can check in. Do you want to continue? Do you want me to do something slightly differently? Let's change what we're consenting to slightly. And then red is, that's it. I have stopped consenting to this. It's time for us to finish. Yeah.
It's a no. It's a no.
And I've had it in the past where I've gone through how the traffic light system works with a new submissive, and we've been playing, and the submissive has called red quite early into a session. Now, some DOMs can get very frustrated, and it can be very frustrating for you as a DOM if you've spent a lot of time preparing something and someone calls red early or earlier than you were expecting. And this may be to a dozen different factors. You don't know what those factors are, but I've had it happen where red has been called when actually the submissive meant amber. And what I didn't want to do was assume they meant amber. So I stopped the session. And we moved on to the aftercare and conversation side of things. And they were very disappointed that I'd stopped the session. And I had to explain, but you're called red, you withdrew consent. You told me I couldn't do this anymore, so I didn't.
And I think that's the right way to go about it. Consent is never a maybe or unsure. It's either a yes or no. If you're unsure about it, it's a no. If you're unsure if there's consent there, if you don't think consent is there, or it might be there, is a no. There is consent. There's not a maybe. There's not an unsure. There is a no. If someone says yes, then that's a yes. Yes means yes. No means no. Maybe means no. it's a whole ball game stuff. But you can only consent to yes with an enthusiastic yes. When it's anyway enthusiastic. It's not like a okay, yeah. It's enthusiastic. Yes, I would like
Yeah,
to.
I go on then.
It is not
No.
consent.
No.
It's a yes. And so sometimes that gets lost. So yeah, traffic light system's a good thing, and all these acronyms aren't always used for everyone. Some people don't like them. Like I said, I don't like prick, but I prefer rack. Some people like SSC. Some people don't. It's whatever you feel comfortable with. I love the traffic light system as well. The idea of green, I'm in a good space. I'm enthusiastically consenting. Amber, I'm enthusiastically consenting, but I'm getting near one of my softer or harder limits. And then red is going, no, no means no, I'm withdrawing consent. So as we're talking about consent, we've got another acronym that's FRIGHTS. So we had a bit of chat about this. So would you like to have a go and say what FRIGHTS is? I'll make sure that I've got it.
It's freely given.
Yeah.
I've forgotten what the R. We went through the R, and I've forgotten the R off the top
And
of my
you
head.
don't like the R, but we'll talk about this.
Reversible.
Reversible.
No, it's gone. You'll have to remind me because
Freely given, reversible, informed, enthusiastic, specific. So we'll quickly go through this because I know we're getting near the end, and I want to make sure that we talk about some really important subjects. And we've got the game. We always love a game here on the Weekly Woof. We couldn't do the Weekly Woof without a game. So freely given, I think that's quite self-explanatory. You can't give consent if you're not conscious, if you're under duress, so you're being forced to give consent, or or in a headspace where you're not thinking logically. So sometimes alcohol.
Where your thinking's been affected.
Yeah, so it's like alcohol affects it. Sometimes play can affect it when you're in sometimes a submissive headspace. It's you're in a space where you're vulnerable, and it's taking that vulnerability and using that against you in a sense. So when you're in those headspaces, when you're under the influence of drugs or alcohol, if you're unconscious, if you're under duress, if you're in a headspace which you cannot actively give consent, then you can't give consent. We talk about reversible. I like the word reversible because it knows that I can always take back consent, I can always withdraw consent, but you have a bit of a...
See, I don't particularly like the term reversible because it implies that I have reversed consent to everything that's already happened. I have reversed consent to things that might have already gone off. I much prefer revocable.
Yeah.
I can revoke my consent from this point onwards. I have taken that consent away. I just feel that reversibles, I just feel that reversible has too many implications for someone saying, well, after the fact, actually, I didn't consent to that. But at the time, I'm saying you can revoke consent, but reversing the consent that's already been given for something that's already happened feels a bit. I'd much prefer revocable as a word to keep the acronym going because you can revoke consent at any point.
Yeah, someone's just said, how does Popper play in the role of consent if they've been taken during the play and they are drugged? So we're not before I say we're not experts. We have opinions, and we're not legal people. But it does. There are times where sometimes there is a grey space. I think you'll say this is that it depends on what level. If they're no longer able to consciously think, or their opinions are now impeded because they are heavily under the influence of a drug, no matter what the drug is, they can't consent. If they are, it's the idea of their mind. If my mind is affected by something I have taken to the point where I cannot actively know safety implications and actively know what I am partaking in, then I can't give consent. There's many times where I've had people who have had poppers who have been out of it because unfortunately they've taken too much and they don't know where they are. When that is the point and they are no longer consciously thinking, they can't give consent. If they are literally of a mindset where they can't think and they don't know what their actions are doing, it's no longer essential. They can no longer think about what they're doing. But as I reiterate, we're not legal professionals. These are opinions. But yes, from a point of view, if they can't consciously think about it, or they are of a point where their opinions and their ability to assess a situation is impaired, they can't give consent. I hope that clarifies it a little. Would you touch upon that?
I would totally agree. You know, poppers do affect your cognitive ability in the moment. Yes, they might only have a short duration. Yes, it might be, 10 minutes later, you might be back down to where you started. But at that point, you are not able to consent properly. And it would be the same if it was alcohol. It would be the same if it was anything else that had that kind of effect on you, long term or short term. You cannot consent if you cannot clearly think about it, if you cannot actively say yes, actively say no. And poppers do have an effect. I'm not a legal professional, and while I have a chemistry degree, I'm not I'm not an active chemist. So these are just my opinions. So yeah, I have to agree with the thumper.
But I always think about it's like driving. I can have a pint and I can drive because my mental state and my vision and everything is not to the point of where it's impaired that I can no longer drive because I'm consciously knowing what I'm doing, consciously knowing I'm driving, I consciously know where I am. I can have one pint. When it gets to the point where I've now had a few pints and now I'm not consciously thinking about doing, I can't actually be aware of what I'm doing, I can't drive. It's sort of that sort of, I can't consent to drive because I'm not in the mental state because I've had so much to drink that I can't drive. It's that's probably where I start drawing similarities. And I think if I could drive, then I am fine. If I could not drive, then I can't consent. I always think if I can't drive, then I can't consent. Even though I don't drive, because I've got learners. But it's that I think that's my headset goes. As I said, I'm not professional. We said so. We did freely given. Talked about that. Also, don't take poppers and Viagra. That's another one thing because they're both vasodilators, and I've met many people in clubs which have had bad effects of taking both. Do not take both. That is something that you don't need to be a medical professional to say. Don't take both. To be honest, also
Blood pressure will plummet.
Also, technically, don't take poppers. Poppers is technically a Class C drug, and we do not promote the use of poppers. If I'm right, it's Class C. That's just a bit. I believe it is. It's because it's technically a room
odorizers. They're leather cleaner.
So you're allowed to buy them, but you're not allowed to use them for recreational purposes.
Yes.
So do not use them for recreational purposes. But if you are, and we highly advise it, and we say don't do it, please don't use Viagra and poppers. Just saying, I'd like to say because I know people in that community do it. And unfortunately, it's companies and groups are scared of saying about it because you're not allowed to use it for recreational purposes. So it creates this taboo and then it causes these problems.
I have pulled somebody out of a hot tub in a sauna and put them in the recovery position because they'd done both of these activities as they passed out because their blood pressure dropped. So it's not fun.
So we said freely given, we said reversible, or we could say revocable. Informed. You've got to know what you're doing. It goes back to sort of freely given. You've got to be informed. You've got to know what you're doing. You've got to be told what you're doing. And it goes, and we'll talk about a bit more. You've got to know exactly what's going on. I've got to know if you are going to have sex with me, I've got to know what you're doing to have sex with me. I've got to know that you're going to wear a condom. I've got to know that if you're going to touch me or not touch me. I've got to be informed of what you're doing. Enthusiastic, we said earlier, you has to be a yes, not a maybe, not an unsure or a no, because they are all no's, but a yes is a yes, and it has to be enthusiastic yes, not like a yeah, okay then, that's a no. You've got to be enthusiastic. And then specific, consenting to a kiss is not consenting to sex. You've got to say exactly what your activity is doing. And going back to the traffic light system, is that once you've consented to a situation, you ensure that you always keep consent. Consent is just not a one-time thing where I go, oh, I've consented to have a kiss now. I'm just going to keep kissing you all evening. That doesn't work. You've got to engage in consent.
To say no.
Yeah, and you've got to engage in consent all the time. Every time you go for a kiss, you've got to regain consent. And also during the kiss, you've got to ensure that it's got consent. If they're pulling away from you, that's a very physical no. That's even though they're not saying no, they're physically telling you no. Sometimes consent is not just verbal, but also physical. And I think people forget that. It's the idea of physical consent in the terms of we have safe words, which we speak, but we also have clicks or taps of the foot, which are saying no, or even a push away, or there's different things that physically we can also do to engage in consent. I think that's about it. I think just quickly, I want to talk about safe sex. I'm a big advocate on safe sex. We've talked a bit about kink play, and we talked about rope work and everything, and but unfortunately, people don't understand this also happens in, I don't like saying normal sexual intercourse. I don't know if you want to talk about
regular.
Regular. I said normal. I said normal. I don't like the word normal.
Well, regular sexual intercourse. It's still about getting, once you've consented to the intercourse, what kind of intercourse have you consented to? And part of you being safe is using safe sexual practices. Be those condoms and the right kind of lubricants to go with them, because we need to make sure we're not using oil-based with rubber latex condoms. If your partner is, or the person you're sleeping with is on PrEP, that's great, but it's not a magic pill. It doesn't stop all sexually transmitted infections.
Some lubricants, some people are allergic to certain lubricants or condoms.
I have a friend who's highly allergic to latex, but there are latex-free condoms out there. You can get them from your sexual health clinic. You can get them for a lot of saunas. Will have them. They're there. The options are there, and you need to make sure that the sex that you're having with the people you're having sex with is that safe and consensual sex. And if you do practice other types of of sex, if you're if you're having unprotected sex with your partner, this is a discussion that you must have had, and the sexual health checks that you're going to have, and things like that. We try not to judge anybody, because we don't yuck another person's yum. And there's a beautiful TikToker that she ends a lot of her TikToks with a great set of phrasing, and it's it's gone completely out of my head. I just know that it always ends with, and consent is key.
Consent is key, and safety is key. And if you want PrEP, it is now being slowly rolled out on the NHS for free with a sexual health clinic. Contact your sexual health clinic. Also, I Want PrEP Now is a great website. They also have a phone number to the Terence Higgins Trust, which is a great HIV and AIDS group which help with HIV stigma and also
because you
access to
equals
prep.
you. I can't say
equals
this
you.
loudly enough. You equals you.
So they're a great charity to reach out to, and they will tell you if prep's in your area. If you are in Gloucestershire, Somerset, in pretty much the southwest, I can't say this enough. The Eddystone Trust is an absolutely amazing group. Absolutely amazing. They do stuff for HIV stigma. They do all the sexual health testing. They'll get you all your tests sent out. You can get tests through the post at the moment. You can get free condoms through the post. They will talk to you about how to get PrEP, where to get PrEP. They are an amazing group, an amazing charity, and they also are supportive of the kink and fetish community. So if you reach out to them and say you're having a problem with a certain person consensually or an activity through kink and fetish, I know that they will help and support. They have worked with us in the past. They worked with another group, Southwest Fetish Men. They are very supportive of our community, and they will talk about consent with you, and they will talk about safe practices with you. They are an amazing group. I can't give them enough credit, even if I tried.
In Manchester, you've got things like the LGBT Foundation, a really, really good group who have a great set of staff who are very happy to help with so many different aspects of sex and sexual health, and so many of the things that members of our community, both the queer community, the alphabet mafia, have to deal with on a day-to-day basis, and all the other things that come along with that. So, if you're in the north, in Manchester and the area around it, that's where I am. Give them a look. They are lovely and based in the village.
Yeah, and the local one for Reading, if you are watching Reading, is the Floral Clinic. PrEP is available, if I'm correct. I know I was on the Impact trial, but I believe that PrEP is now available free, because I was on the Impact trial. I can get it. I get it free, and they haven't stopped that. But I believe they are allowing new people to join and get onto PrEP. Anyway, that concludes our chat part of our lovely time. I know we've run over. I hope you can join us for the last few minutes. We're going to play a little game, just have a bit of fun. I'm going to be blindfolded, so if you like a bit of blindfolding, you'll probably like this. So I'm going to blind myself, and I've learned that it's called taboo. So words are going to pop up on the screen. I can't see it. Daddy's going to explain it to me, and I'm going to say yes, or I'm going to say what the word is. So let's say it's let's say it's something to do with I don't know. You'll get the hang of it. It's taboo.
I'm not allowed to
down.
say the word, and I've got to describe what it is, and you've got to guess it.
Well, you're better than me. You should run this show.
It's the only taboo thing we're talking about.
Yeah, it is the only taboo thing, because we talk about a lot of problems. We've currently lost the timer, so I'm having to find the timer again. So if you just give us 2 seconds. I'm not running the stream today, so it's just a bit of it's a different time today. Hopefully we can get this all sorted. So if there are any questions, you pop them into the chat. We are here next week. I believe that we're having Pastel on, talking about relationships, which leads quite nicely on from what we've been talking about today. And we'll be talking about relationships and the importance of relationships, and also not just homosexual relationships, but also different types of relationships that we can have. I've currently lost the timer. I apologise. Oh, we might not have to do this. Oh no, I found the timer. Everyone, the game is saved. I apologise. I'm going to blindfold myself. You will have 3 minutes. There'll be 10 different words. We're going to try and get through as many as possible. So hopefully I'm going to blindfold myself and everything's going to work. And I'm not going to see what goes on, and someone's going to be running it for me. So are we ready?
I'm ready.
Oh God, I'm not. This is scary doing it on my own. You never know. Someone could just walk in and kill me. Oh. Never blindfold yourself unless you know there's someone to help or someone's watching. Are we ready? Are we
Yep.
ready? So, has time started? We start the timer. Go.
When a person dresses up in a different gender for entertainment value.
Drag.
Drag. Using a thin and whippy instrument to beat someone's backside and legs.
Login.
Thinner. Traditionally,
paddle,
Victorian
swap.
No.
Cane.
Yep. A social event for kinksters.
Munches.
The mental zone you go into
Headspace.
when you are not the dominant.
Headspace. Submission.
When you're not the dominant, you are the
submissive.
And the mental zone you go into is the
subspace.
Yep. What you do when you've finished having your session.
Aftercare.
Elaborate Japanese rope work.
Shibari.
Locking you up.
Chastity.
Neither one or neither male or female.
Non-binary.
Not dominant.
Submissive.
Latex sheath for genitalia.
Condom.
Yeah.
Oh God, I was a bit worried then. I was like, oh, what? I can't say anything there. What did we do it in? Did someone get the time? I think we did it in about a minute. I will have to check that. We'll have to go back and do the frame shot. I think we did it quicker than last week. I think Rove did it in about just over 3 minutes, and we did it in record time. God, look at us two. Well done. Yeah. Whoa, high five, virtual high five. So anyway, thank you very much for all staying tuned. I hope you've enjoyed this evening. Unfortunately, Zael wasn't here, but he'll be joining us back next week. So what we'll be doing is we'll be talking about relationships, and hopefully you can join us next week. I'd like to say thank you. I've got to remember thank yous. Thank yous to Daddy for joining us. Thank you for everyone in the chat. Thank you very much for joining us today. We couldn't do this without actually people watching. Thank you, F.O.D, for letting us actually stream on their social media. We couldn't do it without you as well. It'd be I don't know what we would do without you, because the amount of times that I have technical problems and I'm having to contact them. They are absolutely amazing charity, and they work to support isolation and loneliness within our community, especially within Reading. I'd also like to say thank you. I think we had Hey Queer London, they retweeted this week. Go and look at them. They are also they're sharing all sorts of events, no matter what they are, as long as they're queer. Literally, go and have a look at their social media. They're on Instagram and Twitter. I think that's it. Thank you very much for joining us this week. I hope you have a lovely weekend. Stay safe. Stay consensual, I guess. We'll see you soon. Bye. Bye.